Okay, good morning, everybody, in chemistry and earth systems. Well, it's morning here. It might be afternoon wherever you're at, but that's okay. What we're going to be doing today is I'm doing this because there's some classes that have a hard time paying attention, or maybe can't hear me, or maybe just want to go back and watch something that they missed. So the lab that we're doing today is called the Copper Cycle Titration Lab. And it really is just a lab for you guys to practice on. That's it. My goal with this lab is to get you guys ready for the next lab. The next lab requires you guys to measure some things very, very much precisely. So, with that said, this is the copy of the lab. You should have got this in class. I will also put it on my Canvas page where you're watching this video. It should be somewhere up in the work above. The first thing that we're going to need to get is some materials. Now, this is where it gets a little weird because I'm, of course, doing this on video. We're not doing this in class. I've got a cart right over here. I don't know if you can see it or not. I'll move my camera up there. There you go. I have a cart right here that you guys will be getting the materials off of. The things that you're going to need is a 250 milliliter beaker. Now, how do you know it's a 250 milliliter beaker? It'll actually say right there, 250 milliliter beaker. Notice I have some water in here. It's just I have it getting ready in the first place. The second thing that you guys will need is a graduated pipette. Now, if you look over here, I have all of these different kinds of graduated pipettes. I've got 10 milliliter graduated pipettes, 25 milliliter graduated pipettes, so forth and so on. So you'll just need to get one of them. I want you guys to be super careful when you guys are using one of these. These things cost like $50 to replace. If you break them, they're glass, so don't just leave them lying on the table. If you break them, unfortunately, I do have to fine you so the science department has enough money to buy the replacements. So just understand that this is super expensive, super fragile, but necessary to what we're doing. The next thing that you're going to need is what's called a pipette pump. So that 5 times fast. Pipette pump. Pipette pump. Now, if you look at my graduated pipette, you can see it says 10 milliliters on it. There you go. It says 10. And this little line right here means that that's where 10 milliliters will be. So you are going to need to get a pipette pump that is 10 milliliters. And you can see on the container, it says 10 milliliters right there. So you want to get the green ones. The red ones are for the 25 milliliters. The green ones are for the 10 milliliters. Now this is a pipette pump. The pipette goes into this side. So you kind of see what the little balls at the top. The pipette goes into the side right there. Don't force it in because once again you don't want to break it. Just kind of gently kind of twist it until it's not going in anymore. You should get almost to this little red area, but not all the way. Now the way that this works, in order to draw a liquid into this pipette, you are going to need to spin this roller right here, and you notice it's pulling up like it was a syringe. So to let the water out, you're going to pull down like that. All right. The next thing that you're going to need is a 25 milliliter graduated cylinder. You guys have used these before. This is your graduated cylinder. And once again, if you look on the surface right there, it tells you that it's a 25 milliliter graduated cylinder. You'll also need a 100 milliliter beaker. This is your 100 milliliter beaker right here. You know it's a 100 milliliter beaker because, well, quite frankly, it says so. And that's neat. You'll also need to get goggles and an apron. So, boom, I have goggles and an apron. Yes, we're only dealing with water and glassware today, but this is for practice for the lab that you guys will be doing. We need to get into the practice of wearing these things. You also want to make sure you're not wearing anything too baggy because you don't want to knock over this glassware because remember, super expensive, some of this stuff, and you don't want to get fined for it. Remember, if you're wearing a mask, as you should be right now, I'm in a classroom by myself, so there's no worry about coronavirus. But you want to make sure that you have your mask on as well. If it's fogging up your glasses, it's quite possible that your glasses just are not pulled tight. So you just take these little strings and you pull them to as tight as you need your goggles to be. I've already got this set to where it's comfortable on my face. So got everything in my equipment here. Now you can see this just follow the instructions. What I want you to do is get a 250 milliliter beaker and put some water in that 250 milliliter beaker, no problem. Attach your pump the way it's supposed to be. So here's the pump. Now I'm gonna have to back up to do this. I would rather you guys keep everything on the desk, but in order for me to fit this into the camera view, I'm gonna have to back up. I'm also gonna have to adjust the camera down just a smidge right here. There we go. So you guys can see exactly what I'm doing. All right. And it says draw 23. There was a typo. It should say draw 25. Now I've got a 10 milliliters, so that's not going to draw 10 milliliters in. But what I want you to do is to put 15 milliliters of water into this. That's ultimately what I want you to do. Everybody has to do this. So this will take a little while. Everybody in the group will have to gradually get this in. So what you guys can see is what I'm doing is I'm bringing the water into, I'm rolling the little thing up until this water gets to about, you can see the little water, no, you can't see it, shoot. You can see the little water droplet moving up and down here as I move the little ball, the roller back and forth. I want to get that little roller up to about 10 milliliters. Then what I want to do is I want to get this into the graduated cylinder. And I'm going to press this little pump right here. Boom. And this little lever right here just basically lets all the water out. Or if you want to be a little bit more precise, you can move the roller back down and that will push the water back out into the graduated cylinder. All right. And you can kind of see right now that if I try to hold this straight with the camera would just stop moving. It's trying to find me. It says, hey, where's Mr. Lee? I've only got about 10 milliliters, so I need to get a little bit more. So here I am. I'm rolling that little roller up. All right. And now this is where it starts to get precise because I want to get 15 milliliters in here exactly. Now this is about where everybody gets things wrong. I'm going to show you guys. And I'm going to hate myself for making a video if I get it perfect right the first time, but I don't think I did. Couple of things. First of all, I'm looking down at the graduated cylinder. I need to be looking at this graduated cylinder. In order to read the amount, I need to have this graduated cylinder sitting flat on the table, and I need to be looking at it eyeballs directly at the line. So hard for me to do this on the camera, so I'm going to just go like this, and I'm going to look at this and say, is this at 15 milliliters? And I'm going to try to hold this up to the camera. The camera, stop moving camera. All right, I'm going to hold this up to the camera. Right about, and I want you to notice that as I'm holding it up to the camera, you can kind of see how the water is like a magnet. And what a magnet wants to do is it wants to cling to things. And if you look at this very, very closely, you can see that the water is trying to cling to the glass. This is called the polarity of water. And the water's trying to, really, it's literally trying to crawl up the sides of the glass. As a result, the water that's in the middle is kind of bowed down. We call this a meniscus curve. So what do I measure by? Do I measure by where the water is hitting the sides of the glass or the bottom? And the answer to that is you want to measure by the bottom. So here we have, it says that it's at 15, this big long line, and it looks like I'm at 15, but if you look at the meniscus curve, point at this because this is really precise here. If you look at the meniscus curve, I'll hold it up, you can see that I'm off by 1 milliliter. So I'm going to have to add just a smidge more of water. into that. So I'm going to draw a little bit more water up. And I'm going to get down here and look at this really closely. I certainly don't want to let the water just run out of the pump. I'm going to slowly add it until the bottom of that meniscus curve hits at 15. All right, and now if I could show this to you guys again. This is, once again, this is really difficult to do because I should be doing this on a table and my camera is a little crooked, but can you see now the bottom of that meniscus curve is right on that 15. It looks like the water's a little higher, but the bottom of the meniscus curve is on the 15. And that's where I want it at. And it has to be precisely that. So the last thing that's going to happen is you're going to raise your hand and say, hey, Mr. Lee, could you come over and sign my paper? I'm going to come over and I'm going to look at this really closely. If you're a milliliter off, I'm going to have to say, hey, either you have to remove somewhat. If you're in 16 in there, you need to get back down to 15. If you're at 14, I'm going to have to say, well, you're going to have to add a little bit more. And that's the importance of these. This is called titration. That's the importance of having something like a pipette, is so that you can get that exact measurement in there. Imagine if you're trying to do this in a faucet, this would never happen. So, in summary, be super careful with these. Get ready with this. Get your materials. This should not take you the entire period. There's a second part of the assignment that you guys are going to be doing to get ready for the lab that will be starting next class. Just a reminder to you guys that starting next class, we are going to be doing a lab that part of the lab we can't do in our classroom because we do not have a fume hood and it puts off a toxic gas. So I'm going to take that materials in and make that first step for you. But you are going to be going through all the other steps, which means it's going to require precise measurements. And it's going to be using different chemicals, which you've probably never used before in your life. You have no idea what these chemicals are or what they can do to you, the dangers behind them. So safety features like goggles, aprons, long hair needs to be put up. This would almost be considered too much of a baggy clothing, so you might need to take your baggy jacket off. No open-toed shoes, all of those safety features. I'm going to insist that everybody stays in their zones and their groups that they're working with. That's going to be a very, very strict part of this assignment. And yeah, so you're going to have to make precise measurements dealing with chemicals that could potentially be dangerous. It's an interesting lab from start to finish, and I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope this is helpful for getting you to that point. Y'all have a great day.